Hey, gamers. If I had to describe Bye Sweet Carole in one sentence, it would definitely be Disney in hell. That fits it perfectly. The game starts out with this innocent, happy scene with green grass and blue skies and birds
Oh,
tweeting and
hello,
bunnies
little
hopping
bunny.
around, to people's heads falling off, demonic red eyes, and tentacles coming out of their mouths. But is this inventive story and unique gameplay of this dark, demonic, Disney like fairy tale enough to make it worth your time? Let's break it down and find out. For those of you like me who are lovers of Disney and animated movies, this game was seriously a trip down nostalgia lane for me. It was like transporting me back to my childhood, getting all giddy, going into the cabinet full of VHS tapes, just stacks and stacks of them, trying to figure out which Disney movie I wanted to watch today. Of course, that comment is for those of you that's old enough, like me, to know what a VHS tape actually is. For those of you that have never heard of a VHS tape or is like, what is this guy talking about? I'll just put one up on screen. I think the most unique thing about this game are the hand drawn animations. It's like those old timey Disney movies, not like what we have in the new era. It's like, Cinderella and Snow White and Hercules. It's almost like the drawn pictures are just like shuffling across the piece of paper. That's what the animations look like in this game. Another thing I really liked about this game is the wide variety of gameplay and puzzles that they had. This game is pretty much I would say a puzzle platformer. The most of what you're going to be doing in the game are puzzles and more puzzles, but they do change it up. So you start out, Lana is the main character, and you start out with her human form and doing puzzles that way. But then she transforms into this like black little bunny, and then that black little bunny can do a whole bunch of different unique things that her human form couldn't. Then later on in the game, you have this companion called Bazzy, and you can use him, and actually his head pops off, and his little head can run around the level and can do various things like being lit on fire or get electrocuted. And then those little unique mechanics can be used to solve puzzles throughout the game. And then you can also use Bazzy as a full, character, not just his head. And he can actually attack with his umbrella that he has. And there's other things that he can do that Lana can't. The thing I probably love most about this game is its story. It is so interesting and so engaging. And it starts out with Lana, being just this innocent girl. It seems innocent enough. She's hanging out with her friends, stuck at this, orphanage called Bunny Hall. And then all of a sudden there's just like this horror element to it. Things get crazy really fast. There's time travel and a lot of other things that really change up the game. And she goes from like an innocent girl to really transforming into a strong woman and carrying it through to the end. But she changes a lot throughout the story. And there's quite a few twists actually that I never saw coming really. And it made it really interesting to play and kept me engaged throughout the whole game. Another thing I think this game does well, and it's pretty bold because they do not shy away from mature themes. They really, look at loneliness and loss. Lana goes through this on more than one occasion throughout the game, and it's interesting to see, how she transforms from beginning to end because of it. Lana also does show some selfishness, and that has to do between her and Carol, her friend that she's trying to find in the game. And it's interesting, and I don't want to spoil exactly, how she's being selfish because it is a big part of the game, I think. But it's interesting to see how she moves forward from it. They do also tackle the topic of bullying. So Lana is not a popular kid at the orphanage at Bunny Hall. All the girls are, bullying her and bullying some other students that are not as popular as she is. It's interesting to see how she becomes stronger and speaks up for herself and, helps this other person that's also getting bullied to, really become stronger because of it. This game's back in the 20th century when basically women were like second class citizens to men. So they do really look at, the emancipation or basically freedom of, the slavery of women from men. It's a pretty heavy subject, but I think they tackle it well and they integrate some of those kind of horror elements underlying the theme of the game. The last theme is forgiving yourself for your past mistakes and being able to move forward, reflecting on your mistakes and trying to learn from it and become a better person for it. And I think Lana does that, throughout the game. And it's a huge theme. And really, that's how some of the twists are in the story as well. But I won't spoil anything because I think you need to experience it for yourself. As much as I enjoyed the story in Bye Sweet Carole, and I also really like the gameplay too, but it does have its shortcomings. The biggest thing being the clunky controls. I think in some sections of the game, the controls just weren't right or they didn't react as quick as you thought it should. One of these examples is when you're using Lana as when she transforms into the Black Bunny. And don't get me wrong, like the Black Bunny was actually my favorite part of the whole gameplay. I thought using the rabbit was the most fun out of all the different characters and transformations that you are able to utilize when you're doing the puzzle platforming. But one example of this, like for the rabbit, she can jump like really high compared to Lana's human form. And in some sections of the game, so you hit X to jump, at least on PlayStation is what I was playing it on. You hit X to jump and she can jump up to a platform, but there are some sections where you had to have her placed in just the right position in order for the X icon to show up in order for you to like jump up onto the next platform. So it got pretty hard as you were doing some of those things while other things were going on as part of the gameplay. That made you hurry more than you wanted to. And I think one of the gameplay mechanics that I didn't like as much, it was cool in concept, but it kind of hindered other parts of the gameplay, like the puzzle platforming portions of it, I thought. And that is the hide and seek mechanic. So there are these hunters, like these demonic, horror characters throughout the game that will actually hunt you as Lana or as the bunny. And in order to get away from them, you have to like basically play hide and seek. So there's these little areas where you can go and hide in like a closet or under a table or something like that, and then you can hold your breath. While that mechanic works really well when you're just doing the hide and seek portion, that's fine. But when you're trying to do certain parts of a puzzle and then like this hunter comes out of nowhere and you have to go and hide, so it takes you away from actually doing the puzzle part of the game. One of the other things is the puzzles. I think they're very unique. They were fun to do and I enjoyed most of the puzzles throughout the story, but some of the puzzles can overstay their welcome. There's this one portion in the game, I think it's in like chapter 7 or 8 maybe. You're in this mansion and you have to keep like time traveling back and forth to change different things, and then you find different things and have to go back in time or forward in time in order to complete the puzzle. And it gets a little confusing, but it's definitely the longest puzzle in the entire game, and I think it just overstays welcome just a little bit. So I think the last thing, I don't know if it's really a con or not. I personally don't think it's a con, but the game is on the shorter side. So depending on how fast you get through the puzzles and, like the hide and seek portions of the game, it lasts anywhere from about 4 to 6 hours. And I realize that's not a lot of time, but I think for how the game is set up, I think it works pretty well. So the mechanics in the game, they don't get stale. Some of them are reused a little bit, but I think the elements of the game are unique enough and the story is really cool that the 4 to 6 hours it really doesn't bother me on the length of the gameplay. But for some people that's a game breaker for them. They won't buy the game because of that. So it's something to keep in mind. Bringing it home here, I really think this game revolves around its story at its core, And I think once you start playing this game, you're definitely going to want to stick around until the end to see how this story plays out. It's about the last hour or so that the twists really start happening. And I gotta say, I never saw them coming. And I really think it was interesting to see how that story played out. While the game is short, I personally didn't see that as a con. I think it kind of worked in its favor because some of the puzzles, they didn't overstay their welcome. Some of the repeated mechanics, like the hide and seek mechanic, also didn't overstay its welcome. So, in that respect, I think it actually worked well for being a shorter game. And, the focus was really on the story, anyways. So, it didn't bother me. But for some people, that'll be a deal breaker, but it wasn't for me. And for any of you guys who, like me, love animated movies and Disney movies, then I think this game is going to be definitely for you. And for other people who maybe aren't as big of fans as I am, for animated movies or Disney movies, they might just be looking for a good, unique story and some inventive gameplay. And I think you'll find that here. That about wraps it up for me. Thanks for watching. And until next time, keep on gaming.